Are you prepared? We're the Office of Emergency Services, and we're committed to providing the most up-to-date and accurate information so that you and your family can stay safe during an emergency. Part of being prepared is knowing your hazards and taking proper precautions. Visit mendoready.org. On the Know Your Hazards page, you can find hazards for where you work, where you live, and where your kids go to school. On the Plan and Prepare page, you'll find a plan template. It's important to know what you're going to do, what you're going to take with you, how you're going to communicate, where you're going to go, and how to get there.
One great way to prepare is to pack a go bag. Each member of your family should have their own go bag. Visit our website, mendoready.org, to get a list of items that should be in your go bag.
Gathering and organizing important documents before an emergency is an important part of preparedness. So visit mendoready.org today, where you can find a list of important documents that you should have ready near your go bag in case you have to evacuate.
Not every emergency requires people to evacuate. An emergency kit will have supplies for you to remain self-sufficient for 72 hours. Find a list of supplies for disaster kits on our website, mendoready.org.
A prepared community is a resilient community that will recover faster from disasters.
What is the date today? December 11th, 2025. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone for making it. Thank you for hosting us here in beautiful Mendocino on this great day. We'll start off with call to order, of course. How about a roll call of the directors present?
Thank you. Director Russ, Director Klein.
Here.
Director Gore, Vice Chair Polly. Here. And Chair Rabbit.
Here. And just a note, Director Gore had a late minute, had to cancel late minute because of a family health issue. So we certainly miss him and wish them all the best. We'll move on then to the approval of the agenda. There's a relatively short agenda today. One consent calendar item, minutes from our last meeting. A couple of action items, one informational item, and then of course we'll top off with public comment. I'll look to my colleagues if there's any question, comment, or concern on the agenda, and if not, can I get a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
So we have a motion by Klein, a second by, I always just get to say Janet.
That's fine.
And we can do a voice vote, right? Because we're all here. For approval of the agenda, please, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
If there's anyone opposed, please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. Moving on then to our regular calendar items. This first item, item number 4, is to approve and authorize the executive director to execute this master agreement for the Eel-Russian Project Authority member agencies to provide various services and to advance costs for IRPA. And I will turn it to our executive director, Mr. David Manning.
Thank you, Chair Rabbit. I am going to let Scott Shapiro, co-counsel for IRPA, run through the presentation on this item.
Great.
Thank you, David. Members of the board, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. What we have today is an item for your consideration, which is approval of an agreement, and this is the agreement that we spoke of in concept at the last meeting of this board on July 21st of this year. At that meeting, we started to present to the board concepts for how this fledgling agency with such an important role would go about executing agreements to get work done. And we spoke with the board about the member agencies of the board of this agency actually executing agreements and implementing work on behalf of IRPA so as to not duplicate bureaucratic functions. What we're trying to do is make sure that we don't end up having unnecessary costs and unnecessary bureaucratic duplication of staffing and other contracting functions. And so at that meeting on July 21st of 2025, the board took various actions regarding that work and told us that we should track costs and expenses of our member agencies on behalf of IRPA. We should feel free to negotiate with a consultant to provide environmental compliance for the new Eel-Russian facility. And we should go ahead and start creating a draft agreement for how member agency approved expenses and reimbursement would occur. What you have before you today is a master agreement. It would be executed between IRPA and its two member agencies, Sonoma County Water Agency and Mendocino County Inland Water and Power Commission. The master agreement sets up different categories of costs, and some of this is because as a new agency and an agency that is still negotiating a reimbursement agreement with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, we're not sure exactly how all of it's going to work. We're trying to create some flexibility, but also some certainty for the board. The board needs to feel comfortable that you're not approving reimbursement for things that shouldn't be reimbursed, but we're also trying to have flexibility so that we don't have to have meetings every 2 weeks as expenses show up. And so what we've created are 4 separate categories. The first category would be costs approved by the IRPA board directly. And a great example of that was at the last board meeting, you approved Sonoma Water to go ahead and to contract for Endangered Species Act services with a firm. Secondly, the second category are costs for staffing done by Sonoma Water and or IWPC for the benefit of IRPA. 2 great examples of that are David sitting next to me as Executive Director and Jessica sitting at the other table, who are providing services directly for IRPA, even though they are staff members of Sonoma. We also recognize that that list will likely grow as we better understand functions that are needed. A great example would be Don Seymour with Sonoma Water, who is really knowledgeable on a lot of the issues required to construct NERF. Tom Johnson, who is a consultant to IWPC for similar reasons. So there is a list attached to the agreement. It's blank right now, and that list can be populated through agreement by IRPA's Executive Director, David, by Sonoma Water General Manager, Grant Davis, and by IWPC Chair Janet Pauley. So if the 3 agree, then that list is populated. The third category would be items of a smaller amount for administrative convenience. We've gone ahead and designated items under $25,000. I will note that for this one, this board at its next meeting would need to come back and actually delegate authority to David Manning in order to do that. You have not done so, but here the agreement creates the flexibility if you go ahead and do so. And then fourth is other costs, and in that case, the same 3 people who are listed above would get together and determine on a quarterly basis what costs looking backwards should be appropriately reimbursed by IRPA. And then the final item there at the bottom, rate for payment. We have set the agreement up with flexibility to accommodate fully loaded rates for overhead. We have to acknowledge that we're still working on getting the agreement in place with Fish and Wildlife. And until that's in place, we won't know the final rules for how overhead is handled. But we've created the flexibility in this agreement to accommodate fully loaded rates if that's ultimately allowed under the Fish and Wildlife Agreement. Here are a few of the examples of the kinds of activities that would be subject to reimbursement. And the first, I suppose it's a bullet point, but it looks like a water drop. The first water drop are costs and expenses for employees acting on IRPA's behalf. And we've already talked about some of those categories on the previous sheet. Secondly, costs and expenses for member agency contracting for services. Some of that could be IRPA contracting with Sonoma or IWPC. Some of it could be IRPA contracting through Sonoma or IWPC with a private third party. And we've already gone through some of the detail in that last water drop on some of the different categories that'll be out there. The recommended board action for you today, after you have an opportunity to think about this and ask some questions of staff and for the public to comment, would be to recommend that the Board of Directors approve and authorize the Executive Director to execute the master agreement for Eel-Russian Project Authority member agencies to provide various services and to advance costs for IRPA. Happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for the explanation going through that. I'll look to my colleagues if there's any questions on what was presented. Please go ahead, Director Russ.
I just had a question regarding the consultant and overhead. So, and unless I missed it, that's not clearly defined yet. You mentioned you're leaving it kind of open for flexibility. Is that something that has been addressed or been talked about yet? Because like usually consultants they're hired for a certain thing, and they get that, it's all inclusive. So are we saying that they're also going to add in overhead?
So let me break down the category of overhead into some subcategories for a moment and then try to come back and answer your question. Typically, when a consultant is hired, the consultant quotes you an hourly rate, and that hourly rate usually already has built in to it overhead costs for the consultant. You know, the consultant has rent, the consultant has staff, the consultant has copiers, and those are built into that hourly rate. So this accommodates that hourly rate. The hourly rate is then being paid, let's use the example by Sonoma County Water Agency in the context of the environmental review contract that we've already talked about. And in order to manage that agreement, Sonoma will have some cost associated with managing and implementing it. So that level of overhead, this agreement would also allow to be reimbursed to cover specifically the staff time of the people that are managing that contract. And that overhead is covered in this agreement if our agreement with Fish and Wildlife allows it to be paid. So we're making sure that all of the agencies that are contributing effort to ERPA are not going out of pocket to do so, so long as Fish and Wildlife's grant agreement allows them to be reimbursed.
Okay, thank you.
You're
for that
welcome.
clarification.
Great. Anyone else? Just for myself, and I'm glad you went through the categories. I was looking at it, and it seemed like the second category was where, is it, the way I looked at it, the first category was going to be any large consultant contract that this board would approve. The second one was staffing with the delegated authority as well. But then the fourth one also talks about staffing. So where does that, and maybe it doesn't matter, but I'm just curious how we came up with these four categories and what falls within specifically the second and the fourth.
So I'll try to come up with a concrete example for each. So we've already talked about David and Jessica as being in the second category.
Okay.
A fourth category would, for example, be Corey's staffing of the last meeting and my staffing of this meeting. That's work that we're doing. We're charging it to Sonoma County Water Agency, to IWPC, and then quarterly, the parties can come together and say, is that a function that is appropriately paid for out of ERPA's funds? And if so, those three parties can agree to reimburse the member agency for that. So some things we know have to happen. Someone has to run the show. Someone has to administer the contract. Other things, it's not as clear until after it's done, and that's what that last category is intended to cover. And the thinking is that as long as all three entities, David thinking big picture on behalf of ERPA, Janet thinking about IWPC's interests, Grant thinking about Sonoma County Water's interests, that if the three of them can agree, then it's an appropriate reimbursement.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions before I look to the public? Is there anyone here who'd like to speak on this particular item? Seeing no one rise, and thank you for that. Bring it back to my colleagues and look for a motion to approve the master agreement as presented to us today.
So moved.
A motion by Polly and a second by?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. A second by Director Russ. With that, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the work that went behind that, and thank you for all the agencies for getting together and figuring out all the technical legalities that need to happen for that. We'll move on then and to item number 5, which is adopt a resolution authorizing the executive director to submit an application and execute a grant agreement with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to receive approximately $9 million in the new Eel-Russian facility, or NERF, planning, design, and Russian River water supply resilience project, and take the necessary related actions to implement the grant, and authorize the executive director to seek and apply for additional grants. We definitely, I think we're there on that one already, and further ERPA's interests, and I'll turn it back over to the executive director again.
Thank you, Chair Rabbit. And thank you for approving the previous item. This will give us the ability to reimburse ourselves, this application to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Let me advance slides here to talk a little bit about how we arrived at this place. Upon the signature by all the parties in late July on the water diversion agreement, the CDFW director, Chuck Bonham, committed $18 million to the two-basin partnership, approximately $9 million to the new Eel-Russian facility and associated efforts, and the same amount of money to Eel River restoration. So this application that I'm going to be describing to you today is to support that pledge made by the CDFW director. We've been working with the staff of CDFW on a pre-proposal. Our colleagues on the Eel River have done the same. I think we've arrived at a place where all of the parties are comfortable with the task that will be accomplished with this total $18 million. The grant award will allow for reimbursement in the very near term for the design and the environmental compliance pieces of the NERF project, and we're going to hear more about our plans for environmental compliance in the next presentation, and also Russian River water supply resiliency planning, and I'll describe some of those tasks in a little bit more detail. So the tasks under this project, there are several. The first, as I mentioned, engineering design for the new Eel-Russian facility. The 60% design has already started. That's in progress using a grant from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamations for $2 million. There is a match requirement for Sonoma Water. That match requirement could be reimbursed through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife grant, as well as the next phases of design. So there's a 90% design that will start in 2027, and then a final design and specifications that we anticipate will start in 2028 and end at the end of 2028. All of those tasks, including managing that effort, is estimated to cost about $5 million. The second task, which we'll hear more about, environmental compliance and permitting, there's a lot of sub-bullets here under this category. It's not only the CEQA document and AB 52 tribal consultation, it's a preparation of a biological assessment of the permits needed for Clean Water Act Section 401, 404. There's NEPA documentation for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. There's a 1600 agreement, a streambed alteration agreement that's required. These tasks will take several years. The total estimated cost is $3 million for those environmental compliance and permitting tasks. And then the Russian River water supply resiliency planning piece. We've identified a couple of tasks that fit, subtasks that fit under that category. One is continuing IWPC's engagement with the Army Corps of Engineers on the Lake Mendocino feasibility study. And then the second category is furthering some of the work that was started under a DWR grant. Jacobs Engineering did an evaluation of storage in the Potter Valley and looking at some of the groundwater resources, the possibility for conjunctive use. It's taking the next steps recommended in that study to more fully test that groundwater basin in the Potter Valley. Those tasks we propose will take 2 or 3 years at a cost of approximately $1 million. So the recommended board actions: adopt the resolution that you read off, Chair Rabbit. The Executive Director of IRPA or his designee is hereby authorized to execute a grant agreement with the State of California, prepare the necessary data, conduct investigations, execute and submit all documents which may be necessary under the grant program, and to execute and submit any further agreements and amendments necessary under the grant program. And there's a second action to authorize the Executive Director to seek and apply for additional grants to further IRPA's interests. We certainly have a desire to continue to look for state and federal monies that support this important effort.
Great, thank you very much. I'll look to my colleagues. Any questions on this particular item? Dr. Polly?
No questions.
No questions?
I have a question. Thank you for the presentation. My question is regarding the announcement of the departure of Director Bonham. Do we foresee any changes or challenges with this grant application due to that?
Thank you for asking that question. We were immediately interested in the timeline for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to continue this work to grant the money to IRPA and the Eel River interests. We've been in very close communication with the Director's office. It is one of his highest priorities to accomplish before he departs. So we're very hopeful that the steps needed to get the formal grant award process started. So there is a more detailed application required by both entities on the Russian and the Eel River side. That will probably extend beyond the now short tenure of the director, but everything will be in place to allow that to happen before he departs, our understanding.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Director Russ.
Is there an estimated time for that to unfold to fruition? Even if Director Bonham hiring or moving, is there an estimated?
I actually do not have an answer. I've asked that question myself, so that is an excellent question. You know, we've been told by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife that it is a high priority. They will work with us as quickly as they can to make these funds available so we can continue this important work, but they did not give a specific time.
Great. Anything else from anyone? I'm just curious. You mentioned the Bureau's $2 million grant. What's the local match on that?
$1 million.
$1 million, okay. One more question. Director Klein.
Yes, are these slides going to be posted following our meeting?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Before we take a vote on this item, I'm going to turn to the public and see if there's anyone here who would like to speak on item number 5. Again, seeing no one rise, I'll turn it back to my colleagues and look for a motion to approve.
You're going to approve both at the same time, or are we taking them one at a time?
What would our legal staff prefer? We can do them both at the same time. So this would be a motion to take both. Is that acceptable, or you want to separate them?
You could do it either way. I don't have a preference. Does Corey have a preference? No.
We'll do it separately. How about that? And we'll make sure we're all covered.
All right.
So a motion on the
First,
stated item that's on the screen right now, which is to adopt the following resolution. The Executive Director, ERPA, or his designee, is hereby authorized to execute the grant agreement, so on and so forth. Look for a second.
I'll second that.
We have a second by Director Russ, and again, on a voice vote, all those in favor of adopting the first part of the recommended board action on the screen, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously. Moving on to the second part, which is to authorize the Executive Director to seek and apply for additional grants for further ERPA's interests. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion by Klein and a second by
second.
Polly. And with that, no one spoke on the last time they had the opportunity, so we'll skip that and go straight to, or we already included that, I should say. We'll go straight to the voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously. Again, thank you for all the work behind that as well. And moving on into our informational item of the day with our new NERF, the NERF CEQA process update. And we have go directly to Jessica for that. And Jessica Martini-Lamb is our Environmental Resources Manager from Sonoma Water, who's going to give us the update on the CEQA process. Jessica.
Thank you, Chair Rabbitt and members of the board. As mentioned, I'm Jessica Martini-Lamb, Environmental Resources Division Manager with Sonoma Water. And with me to my left is Jim O'Toole, Vice President with Environmental Science Associates. You need to slide for us, please. Thank you. So this afternoon, we are providing an update on the CEQA compliance process. So a little bit of background on CEQA. So that is the California Environmental Quality Act. And compliance with CEQA is required of public agencies that are approving or carrying out projects that have the potential for impacts to the environment. And it is basically a disclosure law that allows for ensuring a disclosure of potential environmental impacts that could result from projects and establishing measures that can avoid or minimize significant effects on the environment where it's feasible. And ERPA will be requiring state regulatory permits to construct, operate, and maintain the new Eel-Russian facility or NERF project, and may also seek state funding for NERF. So things such as obtaining a 401 water quality certification from the State Water Resources Control Board or streambed alteration agreement from California Department of Fish and Wildlife will require CEQA compliance to obtain those permits. In this case, ERPA will be acting as lead agency under CEQA, with these other California public agencies such as Department of Fish and Wildlife and State Water Resources Control Board acting as responsible or trustee agencies or both. So the CEQA document is going to be evaluating the potential effects associated with the new Eel-Russian facility project. So the NERF project will include new fish screens, mechanical pump stations, retaining wall housing as a conduit to convey the pumped water, to divert from the eel to the reconfigured tunnel inlet, and long-term maintenance and operation of the facility. NERF will be operated as a run-of-the-river facility, so it's intended to maintain a diversion from the Eel to the Russian in a manner that protects the ecological integrity of the Eel River under the terms that have been described in the water diversion agreement signed in July of 2025. Next slide. So currently, where we are at with the process is that Sonoma Water, on behalf of IRPA, has developed a scope of work with Environmental Science Associates, and this item is scheduled to go to Sonoma Water's Board of Directors for consideration on December 16th. And the scope of work includes development of environmental compliance documents to comply with CEQA, but also potentially NEPA, which will be required for the Clean Water Act permit with the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as assisting with coordination with the State Water Board's CEQA process. The State Water Resources Control Board has initiated their own process for evaluating Pacific Gas and Electric's license surrender and decommissioning project. And then also providing permitting tasks or permitting assistance, and the estimated scope of work is cost is $2.13 million. As I mentioned, the State Water Board has issued already their notice of preparation for the CEQA document that they will be preparing for PG&E's license surrender and decommissioning project. And we do anticipate that there will be close coordination between IRPA and the State Water Board in developing the separate CEQA processes and ensuring that these processes move forward on a similar schedule so that we can keep pace with PG&E's license surrender process environmental review. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim to give some descriptions of the scope of work.
Thank you, Jessica. Looking at our CEQA process, we envision working with IRPA as the lead agency to implement an EIR preparation process that's going to cover the construction, the operation, and maintenance of the NERF facility. That will include multiple opportunities for public and agency input during the process, primarily during the scoping phase of the CEQA process. And then again, as we've completed our technical analysis, that document will be circulated for public review. Our scope of work includes some initial work to define the new Eel-Russian River facility, create that project description and the objectives for the project with an eye towards distinguishing it from the PG&E project, and identifying what are the future diversion scenarios related to this project. And then we'll include a technical analysis across a number of CEQA issue areas, but in this upfront phase, really looking at hydrology, biological resources, cultural resources, recreation, and agriculture. We'll include in our analysis, of course, both project-specific and cumulative effects of the discretionary action, and we are estimating a timeline schedule of approximately 24 months once we get underway. Next slide. We've developed a team to implement this scope of work, with ESA being the prime contractor. We'll be handling the CEQA and NEPA and permitting components of the scope of work. We have on our team, we're happy to have Applied River Science, who's been working on the Eel River diversion already and brings a wealth of knowledge base and information to that impact analysis. We also have David's Engineering to review agricultural effects, and Evans and DeShazo to be reviewing culture resource effects. And there's some graphics here that demonstrate the typical CEQA-related issues, but we'll be looking at all of the issues necessary to complete the CEQA process. Next slide. So a couple of key issues and questions relative to the specific project, and one that comes up quite often is the relationship to larger PG&E project. So, and this notion of, well, can't just one document cover both of these projects at the same time? So just to respond to that, and the board has asked that in previous discussions, the ERPA project is really going to be a separate discretionary action that involves potential effects that are beyond the scope of PG&E's proposed action, which is surrender and removal of the Potter Valley facilities. The effects related to ERPA's discretionary action are very different. So we have separate implementing agencies with different jurisdictions and different objectives, and we need to disclose the effects related to that discretionary action. Of course, the projects overlap both in time and in geography, and from a common sense perspective, minimizing impacts would entail construction of ERPA's facilities in coordination with the PG&E project. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish here in our analysis, is providing integration with the PG&E project because of the commonality of the locality and the timing of the construction, but also really differentiate in terms of the potential effects related to this discretionary action before the ERPA board. So we, as Jessica indicated, close coordination with the State Water Resources Control Board team to accomplish that objective is something that we're really envisioning under the scope of work. Next slide. A couple of other areas of interest, whether or not the EIR will look at effects to agriculture, and the answer to that is yes. We've included David's Engineering specifically who specializes in agricultural resource effects related to water supply, to review the potential effects of the diversion scenarios that would be related with the new project, with the new ERPA project. And similarly, we'll be having a similar analysis of the effects to the Eel River related to the diversion scenarios that are envisioned underneath this project. And as I mentioned, Applied River Science on board to help ESA with that analysis and really bring their understanding of the Eel River to bear on that analysis. So this slide provides just a snapshot and kind of an overview of our technical scope of work. As I mentioned, we envisioned quite a bit of coordination with the State Board and the PG&E team regarding their project, technical upfront studies to really define the project description, the alternatives, and the review issues related to Eel River flows and agricultural resources. We also have a sub-consultant on board for a specific cultural resources report, and then we'll be looking at developing information to support the permitting process that we envision, so an aquatic resources delineation and habitat assessment. Task 3 then goes into our CEQA compliance schedule, which includes a notice of preparation and scoping, support for tribal consultation, and then the draft EIR and final EIR processes. And then we have a number, as Dave and Jessica both mentioned, a number of regulatory permits that would be related to the proposed project. So the Core 404 permit, Section 7 consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NIMS, State Water Resources Control Board's 401 water quality certification of the core permit, and then CDFW's 1602 streambed alteration agreement. We also have in our scope of work support process for NEPA. And then just providing some integration and kind of an overview of the PG&E process and potential schedule. You can see underneath the permitting and collaboration column here in green, our NERF CEQA schedule starting up here in the beginning of 2026 and being integrated into this much larger set of processes envisioned as start of the PG&E project. So I think that concludes our presentation. I'll hand it back over to Jessica or Dave for questions.
Yes, thank you. We're available for any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you all very much. Thank you for going through that, and I'll look to my colleagues for any questions. Director Pauly.
Hi, Jessica. Could you give us a little bit more information about opportunities for the public to comment at different places in this process, and particularly for those who have I assume, for example, the agricultural section, will there be some kind of a questionnaire that's going to be prepared by David's that's going to be given to the public? How do you gather the information that's needed for the analyses?
Well, I'll start with the first part of the question, then I'll turn it over to Jim for the second about David's engineering scope. So yes, there are multiple opportunities in the CEQA process for public comment and public input. That will start with the issuance of the notice of preparation. When that is issued, we will hold scoping meetings to invite the public to come and provide, learn a little bit about the project. There'll be a presentation to describe what the objectives of the project are. But the purpose of scoping is really to get input from the public and from potential decision makers on what the environmental analysis should entail. So what types of impact analysis should be included, what sort of issues that people see the project could potentially result in that might need to be addressed, things like alternatives that should be considered, or if they identify the potential for impacts, even potential for mitigation measure opportunities. So that will happen in the scoping process, and then ESA will develop sort of a scoping memorandum or report to synthesize those issues that we will then use to help inform the evaluation of the impacts that will be disclosed in a draft environmental impact report. And then the draft environmental impact report will then be released to the public for comment. And at that point, we'll probably have a series of additional public meetings to present the impact analysis in the draft EIR and to solicit comments that would then be considered before we prepare what's called a final EIR. And the final EIR will constitute the responses to all the comments that were received. And then that will be brought back to the ERPA board for a final decision. And do you want to address the question about ag?
So with David's engineering's experience in the Potter Valley, there is historical data and resources around agricultural use and water use related to agricultural practices in Potter Valley. So we'll be reviewing that information and then updating it and identifying appropriate outreach mechanisms for users in the valley. So whether that is kind of a stakeholder meeting where folks are invited to come and discuss, or whether that's reach out for individual users. Haven't quite determined the most effective way to do that, but we're certainly wanting to engage that community to get an understanding of their water use and make sure that we're characterizing that correctly from the previous analysis that's been done in the Potter Valley.
And that'll include also the greater Ukiah Valley area,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Alexander Valley as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions? Director Russ?
Where will those public hearings be held when you talk about for public input?
We have not decided on final locations, but do envision that there will be meetings held somewhere in the Eel River vicinity of the Potter Valley project, probably here in Ukiah. And we also anticipate that we'll probably have both public meetings and meetings with resource agencies who might be acting as responsible trustee agencies as well.
Okay, thank you. I also have a question, a similar question about when you talk about cultural resources. Can you explain that a little bit further, the process?
Yes, so CEQA requires evaluation of both impacts associated with cultural resources, so that also includes historic resources. And then CEQA also requires evaluation of potential effects to tribal cultural resources. So on the cultural resources side of the analysis, Evans and DeShazo will be doing investigations, so looking at existing studies that have been done in the within the project area of potential effects for both impacts to cultural but also historic resources that might result from the project. And then for tribal cultural resources, ERPA would be reaching out to tribes to very soon to begin the AB 52 tribal consultation process. So that really gets initiated with IRPA sending notifications out to local tribes to ask if they have an interest in participating in consultation with IRPA regarding the project. And we anticipate that that could result in multiple tribes being interested in consultation. And the subject of those consultations are generally confidential. So they will be usually a government to government, in this case IRPA to the tribal government's consultation. And the results of those consultations will then be summarized and evaluated in the environmental document. But we're very careful and cognizant to make sure that the confidentiality the tribes seek in that consultation process is maintained.
Great, thank you. I think we, can't speak for everyone, but I think what's true is erring on the side of more public outreach and hearings is always preferable, especially with complicated projects that need to have a lot of time and effort put into it to communicate what it is that we're doing and the impacts that may occur. So I do appreciate that, and hopefully over the 2-year period of time we'll have those opportunities as well. And reaching throughout the appropriate geographical locations so that we won't be criticized for falling short on that. So thank you for that. This is an informational item. I will open it up for any public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this particular item? Seeing no one rise, I'll bring it back and just say thank you again for the work. Look forward to continuing down that path. I will want to jump back because I'm not sure if did we skip the consent calendar or the approval of the minutes? We did, and I apologize. So we're going to skip back up to the approval of the minutes of the meeting that we held, I think, down in Sonoma on July 21st, 2025. Look to my colleagues for any questions, comments, or concerns over those minutes, and if not, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
Approval by, motion by Klein and a second by Russ, and with that, just a public comment on the minutes. Who's read the minutes out there? Oh, good for you. Is there any public comment on the minutes? Seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back, and with a voice vote for the approval of the minutes of the July 21st meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously, again with all present. With that, we'll skip down to item number 7, which is public comment. And this is public comment on items not listed on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. And I'll look if there's anyone here who would like to speak to the board before we adjourn for the day. Not seeing anyone rise. We appreciate that. And I believe if there's anything for the good of the matter, look to item number 8, board member announcements or reports, if any. Does anyone have anything they'd like to put out there? Board Director Pauly?
Yeah, I have something really quickly. Staff has been working on, and we have just approved and sent out today a rebuttal to the recent UN blog of December 5th that's titled No Dams, No Water. We have copies of that are here for you to pick up if you wish to. That is also being posted on websites for IRPA, IWPC, and PVID for sure that I know of. Farm bureaus have been notified for their constituents, and so anybody else would like to have that information, please pick it up or you will find it. And I just want to again thank staff for helping put this together and going through our water diversion agreement to clarify some of the mischaracterizations that were written in the UN blog. So thank you to staff.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else have anything? Just to also want to thank staff for the continual work. It was such a passionate and complicated project as this, it's important to continue to have those conversations, sometimes the difficult ones, but to continue to talk to one another and to talk to the community and make sure that that everyone is fully understanding exactly what this board's responsibilities are and what the future holds, as well as what's happening with the overall system. So thank you, everyone there who's participating on that, including the meeting that was held just a couple of weeks ago. If there's nothing else, if there's anything from the executive director, until we meet again.
Until we meet again, no, thank you for the time and attention to this important project. We're looking forward to moving ahead with some of the work products that Jim and Jessica described. That will be a next step in the new year.
Great. And again, thank you for all the work that's been going on behind the scenes, all the work that was in the 2 items that came forward today and the informational item as well, and for everyone attending. And with that, we are adjourned until we meet again, I think, down south next time. So thank you.